It is 6:35 on July 17th, 2023. I'm calling this planning board meeting to order. If we'll stand up and pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, if you'll do a roll call, Christie.
Donald Alderman,
Here.
Brad Riddle,
Here.
Tim Bolliger,
Here.
Steve DePonis,
Here.
Mark Bertacci is absent.
Okay, we're doing the planning board first, so I need, if you've had a chance to go over the last month's minutes, I need a motion on those.
I need to ask a question
Okay,
before we make a motion to accept those minutes. At last month's meeting, there were several people that spoke in regards to the roadway that was cut in, the driveway.
right.
Was there any resolution to that?
So the driveway that was cut in, it was actually a neighboring parcel. It was not Joe Tillman's, it was one of his aunts. Bruce and Thomas were both working on it. I haven't checked in with them. I know that they told them that it would either need to be fixed or, put back to the way it was, or they would have to get engineering because, they definitely cut into that, where it was a hill, the berm. So I will have to double check on what the resolution was because wasn't my department. So it's Public Works and Bruce. They're
Okay.
handling it. But it was a different property than the one that you looked at.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay,
I make a motion that we accept last month's minutes.
I second.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Passes 4-0. Okay, let's move this here. Okay, new business is the Springs Garden Village Plan Development. Z23-000030. Is there anybody here that would speak on behalf of the plan development? Okay.
3 minutes.
Oh, excuse me, everybody, we have to keep everything to 3 minutes from the public talking on this. So at 3 minutes, the buzzer will go off. That's not for you, you're the developer. But the buzzer goes off or the light comes on. That's it. We have to just keep it short, otherwise it gets out of hand. Thank you. All right, go ahead, sir.
Oh, sorry, wait, question. Do we have to swear everybody in because it's quasi-judicial? Okay, just making sure.
Anyone that anticipates talking about this or any other subject tonight that's quasi-judicial, if you're standing, raise your right hand.
Christy. Okay.
I was ready, sorry.
Okay, we'll start with Ashley. State your name and we'll go around the room.
Ashley Stefanos.
And Kristen, if you would also take down the names as people go around the room.
Clay Swager.
And we'll start with this first row over here, please. Say your name loud enough that Christy can take it down, please.
Melinda Tyson. Deborah Gezzi. Dorota Holman.
Slow down.
Hang on, Belinda Tyson, gotcha.
Deborah Gezzi.
Got it?
Dorota Holman.
William Hines, Hines.
Got it? Emily Shirky.
Is that everybody?
And this gentleman over here, I think,
He said it first here, or the guy in the back?
no, with a striped shirt on in the front row.
Andrew Kaplan?
Got it? Okay. All right, very good. Do you swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Mr. Chair, all the witnesses have been sworn.
All right, thank you very
Next
much.
step is to go poll your board
that's
to
right.
see if there's any ex parte communication.
Has anyone discussed this particular item with anyone in the public or each other in the past?
No.
No, me neither. All right. Go ahead, sir.
All right. Mr. Chair and board members, good evening. I'm Clay Swager. I work with EDA Consultants. I'm a certified land planner. It's nice to be back before you again. It's been several months since I've been here. I have been hired to help the property owner bring this rezoning application forward to the city for your consideration and the city council's consideration. I'd like to give you a brief presentation. I'm just going to walk through the nuts and bolts of what's being proposed and then answer any questions. I'm also here tonight with the property owners and Mr. Andy Kaplan, who's a local architect and is involved in this project as well from the architectural building design side. So, if I may, I'd like to go through a brief presentation. So the project area is shown on the map. It's approximately 3.7 acres. It's located on Main Street, 41. To the west, to the north is Northwest 176th Ave, Southside Court. To the east, the Dollar General that was fairly recently constructed is immediately to the south. There's a number of commercial businesses to the west of us on their side of Main Street, and commercial business Tumblemania to the north, and a residential neighborhood to the east. This is also located in the core of the city. I'll go over a little bit of this in just a minute, but it is in the urban services area. It's in the city's traditional city area, which are designated areas in the city maps for urban development and redevelopment. So the proposed rezoning is from C2, which is a commercial zoning district, to planned development. Again, it's on 3.71 acres. We put an application together that we believe is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan, including the future land use map for the city of High Springs. We're not asking for an increase in density. The land use allows residential development currently, and I'll go over that in just a moment. In fact, the zoning that's being proposed would be less than half of what the land use density is allowed on the property for the mixed-use designation. This is the current zoning map. As you can see, industrial to the west, R2 to the east, C2 to the north and south, and then also on this property in red. And this is a PD. So planned development, is, I'm sure the board knows, is a site-specific zoning with a master plan with a set of conditions and development regulations and restrictions that are unique to the property. And we worked hard from our perspective and also worked closely with city staff to try to bring forward an application that was really tied down to what's allowed and also is trying to establish being compatible with the residential area and the commercial areas. There are a number of design standards, both for the site and the buildings, that we've been working with city staff on, and that's all part of your application as well, and I'll go over those in brief in just a moment. This is a condensed version of the PD master plan, which is the zoning master plan for the property. It's really broken up into three different colors, three different areas. So the areas in green, which is about 40% of the site, that includes common areas, green spaces, landscape perimeter buffers, stormwater retention areas. Those are going to be landscape green areas. Everything in gray is what I call the vehicular use area. It's driveways, parking spaces, sidewalks. There's a requirement in the PD to have a sidewalk in front of every residential unit proposed in the project. And everything in yellow is the proximate area of the residential units themselves. The residential unit type in this project is multifamily, duplex, townhouse. No more than 2 units may be attached. With these units, 38 units maximum are proposed, with no more than 2 bedrooms for each of these units. The maximum building height is prescribed for 30 feet, which is consistent with, and actually I think it may be less than the single-family zoning districts in the city. So the attempt is to make sure that the height is compatible with the residential areas. There are setbacks that are prescribed around the perimeter of the project as well. The landscape buffers that are on all 4 sides. We want to make sure there's enough parking provided for not just the residents, but also any visitors, so you don't have any issues with overflow into the city street and illegally parking. The requirement for parking is a minimum number of spaces has to be 1.5 per bedroom. A lot of times you'll see 1 or 2 spaces per unit, and then when you start multiplying that by bedrooms, then all of a sudden you're short on parking. So we tried to think through that and make sure that won't be an issue in the future. As far as signage goes, we would just propose 1 sign along the entrance to the property, just in compliance with the city's land development code. So also I wanted to point out too, this is just the first step for us. If this is approved, we would come back with a site development plan with engineering plans and more details for this board to review and the city commission. So first step of a couple. I won't go through all of these in painful detail, but we can talk about any of them more that you like. But there's about 3 or 4 slides. These are excerpts of the PD development regulations, and we worked really closely with the city manager, who I believe has had some experience with some other residential projects lately, to try to bring projects forward and have standards for the city that they feel comfortable with, and make sure that the bar is raised higher than what otherwise might be allowed with just straight zoning. And so, of course, there's a list of permitted uses, which I mentioned. This would be no more than 2 units attached, 1 accessory building, and then accessory uses. The minimum dwelling size for these units is 1,000 square feet, so they would all have to be over 1,000 square feet. The setbacks are prescribed here. The building height is also prescribed at 30 feet, as I had mentioned to you just a moment ago. No more than 50% of the site may be covered with buildings, but in fact, will be probably half of that or less than half. That'll probably be 20% of the site will be building area. The rest will be green space and parking buffers. But you have to set a standard as a minimum. There are a lot of standards for the buildings themselves. There are standards with the intent here is to, as it says, to harmonize the surroundings and demonstrate standard of quality. Make sure these are nice looking, attractive structures and that are compatible with what you see in the area. There are requirements for building materials. You can see there's masonry, brick, stone, stucco, hardy board, and other similar type materials. Requirement for architectural shingles. Flat roofs are not allowed. Not allowed. Windows have to be recessed or projected, so there needs to be some attractiveness to these units. And roof materials. Actually, the first 3 are just a repeat from what was on the previous slide. There's more standards for architectural design, including articulation of the buildings, covered porches, box windows, bay windows, variation in materials and placement. These all can't look the same. They all can't just be a big square. They need to have variety, and they need to be built to a higher standard than what you might see if these requirements were not put in place. And the applicant agrees with all of these things, and the architect is here and can speak to those elevations that he's bringing forward, and also he's had a chance to review all these and is in full agreement with all the requirements. Again, the one accessory building would be very small. It would be a small maintenance building and an office for the management of the property, and that has to have the same architectural style as well. It can't just be a trailer or something put on the property. It has to be built, site built, and have the same standards. Refuse, garbage has to be in a fully screened area. There are many landscape requirements. Every green area has to be part of a landscape plan. There's buffers on all 4 sides of the property with the landscaping requirements for trees and shrubs that are all prescribed in there. There's also even a requirement for foundation plantings along the front of all these units between the parking area, just to make sure that it's very attractive and well designed. So these are some of this is the last slide on this. These are some of the general development standards. Again, it prescribes the minimum landscape buffer along the perimeter, requires a sidewalk internal in front of all the units, It has to be curb, parking area. We have to be fully consistent with the concept plan that I showed you previously, which will be the predecessor to a site plan that would come back before you. And there's also requirements for signage, that there needs to be some enhanced landscape or aesthetic features to the sign. It can't just be a real basic metal sign. It has to be built to a higher quality. So I'd like to go over the comprehensive plan for just a moment or two. So this is the city's future land use map. You can see business industrials in red. The lighter tan, which is our property, and to the north and south, that's mixed use. And then to the right, to the east, is residential mixed. And so there's a lot of words on this page, but this is a cut from the city's comprehensive plan. I wanted to point out that the mixed-use classification identifies uses appropriate and that are consistent with mixed-use classification include residential as a primary use, and that the maximum density is 12 units per acre with the comp plan future land use map today. And so our 38 units would be at 5.1 units per acre. So it's less than half of what the comp plan density allows. And it does suggest that a PD zoning is compatible with the land use designation, and we think is a good way to go, because you can have standards and conditions for the project and not have it just be for example, a multifamily zoning district where there are no conditions that can be applied. This is also a map out of the comprehensive plan. We are in the traditional city, which is really part of the core of the city, and that includes all the areas with mixed-use land use. And it promotes and encourages, if not requires, projects to be designed to comply with all the characteristics above, or a variety of those, including being infill, having urban services available, connectivity to the street network, and small town scale and character. And so we think we brought something forward that's consistent with all of those requirements for the traditional city district. And in summary, we feel that we have an application that's consistent with all your code regulations and comp plan. We've really tried hard to have standards and criteria that will help encourage and require compatibility and a higher level of development. This is a use that's allowed in the comprehensive plan. So we think this PD is one that's consistent with those regulations, and will end up being a very nice quality project. So with that, I will conclude. I can put the master plan back on the screen. I can answer questions now or later, whatever you all would like.
Let me ask one. Ashley, what is the city's recommendation on this?
Staff recommends approval because the density meets the requirements of our comp plan. The use is a good transitional use because it's industrial, and then multifamily, and then single family. So that's a nice transition. So that would be a normal transition in planning circles. Also, the developer has agreed to many stipulations. Again, they're up and above what our ordinance requires. So the PD was a way for staff, again, like we've been trying to do, to get the higher requirements instead of someone coming in and doing straight zoning, that we couldn't do all of that. So they agreed to come forward with the PD with the higher requirements. So that's another reason we're recommending approval. We think it's going to be a good project if the plan board and commission approve.
Okay. Go ahead.
All right, well, project looks great. It really does. But I have some concerns that may not have been taken into consideration. I'm real concerned where this project is being built because of the propane facility and because of Air Liquide. Part of my concerns is one time, and this is why I can relate to it, the same type of facility was on Archer Road where I lived in a mobile home at the time, and that rascal blew up at 1 o'clock in the morning. It broke windows, and I was 2,000 yards away from this place. There was quite a bit of damage done around the perimeter. So I'm real concerned about that. Y'all be quiet, please, while I talk. I don't know what the research that I've done on the Air Liquid. I'm not sure what they build and what type of possible chemical hazards they may have on site. I don't know if y'all can answer this question, but I would like to personally go over there and look at their safety data sheets on all chemicals located on both sites, if they would provide that to me. Because I do have some concerns if something happens to one of those plants, what's going to happen to the residents living there. The last thing I would say, and this is another issue that I experienced many years fighting a landfill, being this commercial properties are right across the street from here. Once these homes are built and somebody wants to sell them down the road, what's it going to do to the value of their homes sitting in a commercial area like this? And I think these are valid questions that I'm asking.
Sure.
There's a couple letters I'm sure that Christie will be reading tonight from some of the residents around there. There's some pretty good input in there, and I may have another comment after that. But for right now, that's my comments for right now. The project looks great, but I have some real concerns where these homes are going to be placed. And I don't know if you can speak to any hazards at either one of them sites, but I don't understand why ATF, after the problem they had at Air Liquid, why they were in there for so long. Why was the ATF involved?
I think Bruce probably coming to another meeting might be the best person to answer some of
Okay.
these questions. I don't
Anyway.
want to have to
No.
postpone it, but he really is the best person.
Okay.
He's not.
But those are my concerns, and I think they're real concerns as a plan board member.
Well, I can't speak to the safety of those businesses. That's not I don't believe that's my place. I will say that this layout did take those commercial uses into consideration, and that the residential units are shifted eastward. We've got at least 200 feet before we get to their property line. So that we have taken that into consideration as far as having some separation. And this area, as I mentioned, the city's comprehensive plan, which is the guiding document, has that whole area permitted for residential on the east side and commercial.
And I understand that, Clay. I understand that.
That's my only response I can provide to you right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. You want to hear from the public first? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Wait, let me ask couple quick ones. Okay, it's 3.7 acres, you're putting basically 38 units on there, correct? Mm-hmm. And about 40% of it is green space,
Correct.
is that correct? Now, just to the east of it, the property's divided up, I guess there's 9 homes on that block. So it'd be what, just 4 times the amount of what they are based on those homes, which is that first block is probably very close to the same acreage, probably about 4.5 acres. But this is multifamily, and it also says that, where was it here? 30 foot would be the maximum height. City Hall's what, 22 foot high?
Yeah, but in most planning categories, many of them it allows up to 35 or 36.
We're not-
You'd be surprised.
We're not talking about being close to 30 foot, are we? Or are we just talking 2-story buildings with a standard roof on it, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so we're not talking a 30-foot high building, okay.
I think the single-family zoning in the city is 40.
Yeah,
So
it's
we
like
don't need to go
it's
anywhere near that, so let's just
Yeah.
cut it down.
in a lot of cities. I don't understand why they make them so high. No one builds that high. Oh yeah, you're right. That's what.
And you said 1,000 foot per unit, which means each building would be about 2,000 square foot, correct? Okay. And would these be considered low-income housing, or are they just standard rentals?
No, they would not be low-income.
Okay. Is there going to be an irrigation system with this, with the city, or through a well system?
Yes, there would be irrigation.
Okay.
Landscape.
They have to.
Okay, and The only access is off of 176th Avenue?
There's actually two, yes, sir.
Oh, I can't even see that. Okay, I see it, yeah. Okay, so there'd be on Southside Court as well? And that's the dumpster. Okay, all right. That's all I have for now. We'll hear from the public if they would like to speak.
That was one of my questions. One of my questions is the one on South Side, can that be moved so it's not coming out? Because the one on the north dumps right to commercial property. So if the one on South Side can be moved to dump out on Main Street, then we're not affecting any of the residents. It's solid plant or buffer zone there. You'd have to shift the retention pond some.
I think the problem you'd have with that is state requirements on the road.
Or is the south side emergency entrance exit only?
Mr. Chair, the plan as it's proposed has full access to the north and to the east to south side. There is no vehicular connection to the Dollar General property. We just didn't think that that would be something that we would want to propose. So if you were to eliminate the south side, then you just have one way in and out on 176.
Which for 38 units should be sufficient, but I believe for fire, we have to have two.
Yeah,
So
and-
then could we turn that one on the east side put a gate across there for emergency access only?
So this is something, again, I'd have to talk to fire about, but in most developments of this size, you have 2 points of access. I think from my standpoint right now, I would be fine with it just being emergency only, because that's what the most important part is.
Correct.
Because that's not so big that one can't handle the amount. So I'd like to double check with Bruce on this, because it's really a fire thing, but in most cases, this would be allowed.
Okay.
I know in our experience too, we've had projects that, you look at what the neighbors, concerns and issues are. Sometimes you do, but you need the fire trucks to be able to get in multiple ways.
Yeah,
So
and that's
gating
what-
that, making an emergency seems like a,
If we can make, if that could be emergency only, and that way these cars aren't coming out to the existing homes. There's 38 units, so they should all be able to use the one and go right to Main Street.
Well, being in the fire service in the past, I would say they probably couldn't do that on the basis that if the one exit is blocked by fire equipment, nobody can get out of the complex.
Well, if it's
So I think it'd be like
emergency,
a
it would be
gate
open.
that you can hit the.
Well, the fire department's not going to use the emergency gate when, let's say that one of the units in the front's on fire, they're not going to go back and come in the back way. They'll come the quickest way in, and wherever the water supply is for the
Right.
hydrant. But if they happen to block that area, there's no other way out for other people, if it's an emergency entrance only.
We
see
could
what-
open, if something happened, they could open that.
If there's a
other-
way to
Yeah.
open it,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
It'd
They-
have to
And the
be
fire
open.
should always have a way to open it.
Yeah.
Right, but usually, like I said, especially with the minimum manning we run, we'll show up with two guys. Let's say we set up right at the beginning.
Yeah,
We're not gonna send someone down to open the gate.
So if there's a real emergency
Right.
that affects multiple people, there will be more than one person showing on scene.
Right, but
But if
usually
it's like a
it's slow.
medical,
Right.
yeah, then it would be just
Right, if it's a
one.
medical, usually it's just one, but if it's a
Yeah.
fire truck and
Yeah.
then
If
the
there- it
next
would
unit
be
shows up, and
slower.
the next unit.
You're right, it would be slower.
Yeah, okay.
I would just mention that a lot of these gates, that from my understanding, is they have something, one of them is called a Knox box or something.
Yes.
Universal key for
Right.
emergency
Yep.
vehicles. They open that gate pretty quickly, at least from my experience and having some discussions about this over the years at various boards and what have you. So I think that's a very viable option. That's something you.
And we could, so some developments, we have kind of drills we do. And so this is one, we could have a drill, and we could have like police show up and open it, and then fire show up at other.
Correct.
I'm just trying to
Yeah.
kind
Right.
of brainstorm.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be fire to open, police should be able to
Right.
open it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, anybody that'd like to speak, just walk up, give your name, and he'll set a timer for you, and you got 3 minutes. Thank you.
My name's Al Hale, and your comments a minute ago was kind of like when I got this letter about the explosion. As I was laying in bed, and I heard the explosion, and I kept waiting for something to hit the roof. and nothing did. And I told Melinda, you need to go shut off the air conditioner because we don't need any outside air coming in. And this is kind of equivalent to this letter that I got. So let me just start. You know, I'm definitely against the zoning change. Let there be no doubt about it. And a lot of the reasons are pretty simple. Traffic, traffic, traffic. You know, up to 100 cars more a day in front of the house. That is if they just went to work and back, not counting anybody that come to see them. And also, the noise level from all vehicles today. Everybody knows it's not, everybody's got a loud muffler, it seems like. Truck City, okay? And then, I did have noticed, I've lived in High Springs a long time, and I would like to say that 95% of people who own property on State Road 45 drive in and out that property. You can drive down there and look around, there's very few. And what few houses they are, they do it. Okay? So what I say is, who benefits from this change? Southside people, we don't benefit nothing. We just get more traffic and stuff. Who benefits is the people that own that property and build all that stuff, walking to the bank smiling. We don't. We get nothing. And as far as that part of that property there's been a couple sinkholes. I don't know if that's been addressed by anybody or what they do. And I have pictures of that happened. 2 that I know of in the last 3 years. So we really don't need the traffic in Southside. And I would like to say that our forefathers and foremothers that planned the city of all that property, the residential and the commercial, they knew things, how to do it. And they did it. Southside is a quiet, one of the quietest neighborhoods in this town. And as far as this 38 apartments of where they're going to build, 19 townhouses, whoop, I'm done.
Yep, you're done. Thank you very much.
That's all right.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
The next person, same thing.
Do you want these pictures?
Yes, I'd like to see them.
My name's Deborah Gezzi, and I live on Northwest 176th Avenue.
Okay.
The zoning from C2 to planned development high density would include 38 two-family, two-bedroom units with 3 parking spaces each. That would be an additional 152 people, assuming 4 people per unit. 3 parking spaces would be 114 additional vehicles, or a minimum of 76, assuming 2 cars per unit with 1 guest parking. And we are not located in the city core. The city core is about 0.8 miles north. South is Dollar General, north is Tumblemania, northwest is R2, and so is east. So we're all residential, single-family, currently quarter to half-acre single-family dwellings. Mixed use is future planned only. It's not current use. It's not consistent with the current use in the immediate area, which is R2 single-family residential. There is no additional land development potential, and there are no parcels available other than 2 small C2 properties, and that's between Tumblemania and Shell, the S&S. To achieve a more balanced mixed is in there. To use 2741 as pedestrian traffic would be absurd because you would definitely take your life in your hands. There are no sidewalks, and I doubt the city has any plans to build sidewalks south of 340. You can take a sidewalk to Post Springs, but not south of there. So you'd have to either walk in the grass, in the woods, or whatever. It does not achieve a more balanced area. There are 2 small lots for C2 development, which would not really encourage any large scale. Closest grocery shopping is Winn-Dixie, 1.8 miles away. Where are you going to go in town? Restaurant, antique store, Ace Hardware, True Value, Lovely Nails. So you got to go to Winn-Dixie. CVS is a mile and a half. Dollar General is next door, and then they have a location where there is a Dollar General, Family Dollar, Dollar General, O'Reilly Auto Parts, and those are all about 1.5 miles away from the area. The Shell station is about 0.2 of a mile. So there's essentially restaurants, antique stores, breweries, churches, all in town, at least 1 mile away. Locational characteristics, it's not an urban area, and we're not applying for more intensive residential, retail, and commercial uses. It doesn't apply to this area. This is an R2 single-family home area, nothing else. These are typically in close proximity to and served by an arterial highway network. That is 6.2 miles away, and it's called Exit 399 on I-75. So where mixed-use development allows interaction among land uses and encourages mass transit and non-vehicular trips. So where are we going? We all taking the trolley to town? Who's going to build a mass transit down to Newberry or Gainesville? I don't think so. And what about the sinkholes? They open up a couple of times a year. Development will negatively impact the existing neighborhood. Deborah Gezzi.
Yep, I've got those right here. I will scan them into the file when we're done.
Unless you live down there and have all that traffic coming by, you can't possibly understand. Steve Martin. Unless you live there, you can't possibly understand the traffic. At the end of the road on 176, when they opened that up and added that other 5 blocks or whatever it was down later on, the traffic jumped from maybe 4 or 5 cars a day to 20 cars an hour. And I cannot overstate that. I mean, the traffic is just ungodly now. If they hadn't put that stop sign there, who knows the things that would have happened with that road, because it's a long stretch, you know, to where it runs. And when you mentioned that about the explosion, I wouldn't want to put a division. I mean, if it was me, I wouldn't want to put a development that close to there, because if they got to hire an armed guard to sit out there by the thing 2 weeks after the accident to keep people from going in there, and there's something going on in there they don't want everybody to see or something. And that just, to me, I would think would raise the danger level. And this little town used to have its little beauty about it. Couldn't buy alcohol on Sunday at all. But people, they come up here and they visit, they love our little town, but then they change it to where it was like when they moved from. I think they ought to keep this little town what makes it special. I've lived here since I was born, I'm 53 years. My mom's lived in that house since 1963, getting ready to pass on to the other world, but hopefully we'll sell it and next people will be happy there, but I just don't think that's a good fit for that place. And if you could find an alternative property where they could build it, I think everybody would be happier.
To that. This has nothing to do with the feelings about the zoning or the plan development or anything, but I just want people to know that all the chemicals have been taken off-site. They're not at Air Liquide anymore, so I just don't want y'all to feel unsafe.
He had mentioned earlier, he don't know what they're doing in there.
Yeah.
And I just made a little note behind that. If they're doing something obviously bad enough where they gotta hire a full-time guard to guard the gate, to cover it up, to keep people from going up there 3 weeks after the accident happened. When you can't find nothing there. I mean, so they didn't want nobody going up there seeing whatever.
Chair, the way we do this is everybody comes to the microphone and has their time, but we don't speak from the audience. I heard somebody was responded to something that you say.
Responded to what she said.
No, I'm talking about somebody else responded to what you said, and this thing devolves into something that Christie really can't take down what everybody's saying. That's her responsibility to do that, to make accurate minutes. So with that, if everybody would respect that piece of it, and you'll have your time to come up and speak, and we'll keep this process. There is a process that
I
we
learned
go.
parliamentary procedure. High school.
Thank you, thank you.
I just wanted people to know they're safe. That's all. I didn't want them to feel unsafe.
Next person, please.
My name's William Hines. I've lived here my entire life. The Hineses have been in the High Springs area since the late 1800s. I have seen it go from my dad growing up. My Aunt Martha was a police officer here for the city of High Springs, Martha Hines. So I'm familiar with this town. I've watched it grow. I've watched it develop. What we have right now, we have a buffer from that chemical plant. If the reason my voice sounds like this is because I was dumb enough to walk down there with my cell phone at 4:20 a.m. when that explosion happened at 4:01 a.m. I have the footage on my phone. I was exposed to that chemical smoke and stuff. I have medical documentation. I was off work for 6 weeks. I have partial lung damage due to the exposure to that smoke. Grant you, if I would have stayed in my home, that would have not happened. But the fact that we did have the tree buffer at 4:01 a.m., my entire house shook like a bomb had went off. So I went out to see what was going on. That was my mistake. I understand it. But by losing this tree line, this buffer, and putting that housing there, like Brian said, I agree 100%. If something else happens over there at that plant, those people are extremely at high risk of fatalities. This tree line buffer gives a little safe zone for us, a single house home. My house is the very first one. When you turn down 176th Avenue and you pass by Tumblemania, my house is the first one on the left-hand side. So I'm right there. And Mr. Rhoda is right across the street. We're the first two homes when you go into that neighborhood. And we wanted to keep, like, I've got 8 grandkids. And when they come out and they play out in the yard, it used to be safe to be in the front yard. Now I have to worry about the traffic coming through. Grant you, there was, like Mr. Martin said, there's stop signs are there. Half the time, people don't bother with the stop signs. They blow right through them. Suggested speed bumps at one time was going to be put there, and that was wiped out. I guess it was cheaper to go with the stop signs. But the traffic flow right through there on that 176th Avenue is really going to be the biggest concern, is having all of that. And like I said, I would be more concerned with what happens at that plant. There's several, the propane plant, with that explosion, as he said, armed guards out there, military, style. They would not allow. I walked up to ask a question, and I was told to leave. Thank you.
If we didn't allow this development and a commercial property went in there, they could pretty well clear cut it except for the retention area, correct?
We do have standards for landscaping, so they shouldn't be able to clear cut anything. Anything that goes in there should have a buffer. But
Right.
I don't
But-
really know what the buffer will be unless I know the use or what's going in.
Right.
so-
I mean, if it was like a shopping center, it'd be like parking with all
Right.
around.
There,
Well,
there should
it'd be like
always be a
Dollar
buffer
Tree.
around the whole site, and then landscaping within it. There's like a maximum number of impervious surface and stuff.
Right.
So everything should have a buffer. I just don't know. How
But the tree
big of a
line
buffer.
would be gone.
The tree line would be gone.
It just depends what goes in there. I mean, if you look at Tractor Supply, that's kind of a good example of what we're doing now. But, so currently, any trees that are dangerous trees can be cut down with a certificate from an arborist, and all other trees you have to go through our tree preservation ordinance. And so they're allowed really just to cut down all brush, but not other trees. And so if they cut down other trees, they have to replace them. But as you know, it takes a long time for the ones that are already there to get grown up. So it's not necessarily going to be the same. But that all should come forward to y'all on there's 2 plans, one the landscape plan, and the other would be, the plan that shows the tree preservation, the tree survey basically. So that would come forward with site plan.
But ultimately, they could go in there, do the permitting for the trees, clear cut everything, build the building, and then put the proper landscaping back in per a plan to prove other than the buffer around the property.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
if y'all approve that, but we have kicked back and told them several times they can't. Because
Yeah.
right now, there's enough teeth in there that they certain ones they have to, right? They just have to, they can clear cut a lot, but we try to save what we can.
Okay.
My point would being is just because of what's zoned, the only way we could prevent that ever from being developed was the city to purchase the property and leave it vacant.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, next person, please. Just give Christy a second.
I'm Emily Sharkey. I already sent a letter because I'm not a great public speaker, but I did just want to speak to that is if it is, yes, commercial would clear cut it, maybe instead of going to a planned development that's that density, switching it to just regular residential would be another option for that. And then just, I live there, I walk around, there's no sidewalks, there's tons of pedestrians out. That amount of traffic is just really dangerous. I've seen in front of their house, someone almost get run over. People ignore those stop signs all the time, and just increasing the amount of kids that are out there. I don't have kids, and I'm already worried about it. So there's that, and then sorry, I had notes. And to speak to the sink, almost after every heavy rain, I see it drop. So it's right in that northeast corner. That's right where the house is going to be. Like, that's dangerous for them, even if they're planning on building, for someone to be in that house and that to sink after every heavy rain. Who knows what else is further in, because that's just on the edge. We don't go walking through there. But yeah, that's, I think, everything. And then, also, just that density is just, I know a lot of people in Fort Lauderdale, and just is something to think of as a planning board. I know you guys are probably already on it, but the sewer system, I know people in Fort Lauderdale, development goes up no matter what. The sewer is always playing catch up. I know plenty of people that have sewage in their yards multiple times a year, and in a city that's this beautiful, with the springs being in our name and why, tourism and all that, and just being beautiful, it's pretty dangerous to go ahead of that sewer capacity. And I know there's plans and talks, but until that's done, it's really hard to go. It's hard to play catch up the whole time. But yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, all right. Next person, please.
I'm Dorota Holman. I live on the very corner of South Side Court and 174, or 176. The sinkholes happen all the time. We had one in 22, a real big one. Just last week, there was one directly in front of our house. It was 18 and a half feet deep. That's what I was told by the people that were throwing red clay in there. The first sinkhole was filled with cement.
Excuse me, when was that? When was the last sinkhole that we were just filling up?
They were filling it with like red clay.
When? You said just a couple weeks ago, or?
No, this was last Friday.
Oh, last Friday, okay.
I called the city hall on Monday because you guys were closed on Friday, and Monday to within 4 or 5 hours, somebody was there filling that sinkhole.
Right.
My husband put red orange tape from the tree to our mailbox so that nobody would fall in and hurt themselves. And also, if you clear the buffer from South Side Court to that wooded area, that's where the sinkholes happen. And the traffic will be incredible because my street goes through, and it's easier to make a right and a left off of 176 to Main Street than off of 174. That turn to go towards Newberry is impossible because you can't see the traffic coming that way. And I just don't want the noise. My value of the home will go down. Children in the neighborhood will not be able to just run around and be safe. And also, Southside Court was covered and built not like all the streets in our neighborhood. And that you will have to talk to the people that covered our street. That's all I have to say. And if you want to see a picture from...
Yeah, take that picture too. Thank you very much. Okay, next person, please.
Hi, my name's Melinda Tyson.
Hold on just a second so
Okay.
she can get her.
Sure.
Thank you for the pictures. If anybody else has some, we'd also like to see those. All right, go ahead.
Okay. And I live at 24218 Northwest 176th Avenue. I've lived there since 1981, 42 years. And I bought, so behind me is Florida Rock. It's never going to get developed there. And I knew this piece of property was commercial. I don't have a problem with commercial property. I don't like high density. The person that purchased this property knows that it was zoned commercial. So I recommend you please keep it commercial. One of the pictures that I did, that Al gave to y'all, was of flooding. When they put the sewer in, it made the water rush. I'm the second one, I'm next to William. And we had to put cross ties in our yard because it just floods it. So we're trying to get it to go in the swell to go down the road because there's no, place for it to drain. And Bruce he was aware of the sinkhole, the pictures are there. I did call and he said that he had a cement truck coming, but it was like a couple days later that he got the cement truck out there and they filled it up and you can see how deep it was. So I appreciate your consideration of not rezoning this property.
Thank you very much. Next person, please. Is that me making the big boom sound? Oh, sorry about that. Car could drive into that. Anyone else wants to speak on this? Well,
I haven't been sworn, but I'd like to make a couple quick comments.
you'd have to come get sworn in then.
My full name is Jeffrey Ryan Crimser. I do.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. I'm Ryan Crimser. I'm Vice President of ThemeWorks Incorporated, which is across the street from this property. I believe our president sent a letter, and we didn't have a whole lot of time to react once we found out, once we were notified of this change. So I'm not sure he fully understood what's going on exactly when he sent that letter. But am I permitted to ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the PD zoning actually allows the city more control than the commercial zoning does. And the city's master, I should say, comprehensive plan allows for multifamily residential within a C2 zoning already. So they can already develop that as multifamily residential without the zoning change. And with the zoning change, the city will actually have more control over how it's developed.
Your mic.
So we recently changed the use table, and so if the PD doesn't go through, then they would, if they want to do this, they'd be required to come get a conditional use permit if they want to do it. So if it's approved, they don't have to do all this extra stuff. If it's not approved, then it's just not
They have
approved.
to get a conditional use permit.
Yeah,
I see.
and so, but if you go the PD route, which is why staff recommended, it allows us to put a lot stronger requirements on them, so you are correct about that.
I see. And our biggest concern is the noise that we generate. We've got big trucks coming in there at all hours of the night, waiting to pick up things in the morning. We're loading product, big pieces, very early in the morning. If they build this there needs to be a sound buffer between our properties and, I'm kind of speaking for Air Liquide and Suburban Propane as well. If there's no sound buffer there, I can't imagine that the residents will be very happy about the noise that we create, not only in the middle of the night, but all during the day as well. And that retention pond, I don't know if that's required to be heavily wooded or what the...
So we try to preserve what trees we can. They haven't come with their tree preservation plan,
But
because
can't
they wouldn't do that unless
if
they're.
the trees are still there, right?
So right, they can't do the grading if the trees are still there, but we do require them to, what's around there, we try to keep as many trees existing as we can. And, but there is a requirement, they have to just do one every so many feet too, but that's not like a buffer, that's more aesthetic than trying to keep what's already there. But we can, when they do the site plan, require them to put more trees for sound.
We welcome a commercial development because commercial development doesn't sleep in the, at night, isn't worried about big trucks going by, isn't worried about noises throughout the day. Commercial development would be very welcome, but this residential development really creates some concerns for us. And not only concerns for our current operations, but also the future value of our property, because an industrial property across the street from a commercial property is going to be worth more than that same property across the street from a residential development. So there would be a tangible impact for us. And regarding Air Liquide, I'll just quickly say they've been really great neighbors since they moved in. We didn't have any damage to our building from what happened there, 0 damage, and we inspected it. The ATF is there because any industrial accident in the state of Florida is treated as a crime scene. So that's why they're there. And please verify all that.
He's correct about why ATF is there.
Excuse me?
He's correct
Okay.
about why ATF is there.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Nobody else? All right, you want to ask some questions first, for a statement?
Do you need to read the letter from Mr. Scott Gill? You don't read it? Okay. All right.
You want to read it?
Nope.
Okay. Any questions up here? We have him come back up if you want. Go ahead. You want to do it after? Or? Go ahead, sir.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I appreciate the chance just to come up just for a moment and offer a few comments in response to some of the input that we've gotten tonight. This is a private piece of property with a lot of land use and zoning entitlements currently today. So it definitely could be developed as a shopping center, a restaurant, or commercial. And my reading of the code wouldn't require any more buffering than what we have. So we're not reducing anyone's buffer beyond what's already allowed in the zoning and land use today. I think that there's opportunities, if you see fit, to limit the access to South Side to address those concerns, and maybe even some additional screening, fencing perhaps along that buffer. Also, I understand traffic concerns. If you just look at an example of a 3.5 acre property, 3.7 acre property that does a shopping center, convenience retail, it's reasonable to assume that 10,000 square foot of building could be put in per acre. It's kind of a relatively average or to low estimate. And the trip generation based on Institute of Transportation Engineers is 44 trips per 1,000 square feet. So that could end up being 1,600 trips a day. Our project with the type of units that we're looking at is about 6 trips per unit, which is about 228 units. 228 trips per day versus 1,600. So it could be 7 or 8 times more if it's built as a commercial site. I don't think there's any additional buffering requirements. I just wanted to give you those perspectives. And I would say too, for the R2 zoning to the east, they require 7,500 square foot lots on water and sewer, and if you divide that by an acre, it comes out to about 5.8 units per acre gross. So we're proposing slightly below that, or right at that. So it's one thing what's there now, it's one thing what's allowed, and not just on our property, but adjacent property. So I understand the concern. I just wanted to give those comments to you to consider when you're reviewing this item. Thank you.
Have you done any ground density reports on that property?
No, not yet.
They'll be required to do that with site planning. They have to do engineering. So they would be required to, they won't be allowed to pass the site plan without taking care of that.
So they would be heavily studying the sinkhole problem.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I want to add another thing about the wastewater treatment plant that it's been bid, the expansion, and we're just waiting for some more parts, and it's going to start being under construction very shortly. So by the time this would come, if approved, or any other development, we're like totally going to be fine on capacity.
Okay.
And just to answer the commissioner's question, that the geotechnical study would be required certainly as part of the engineering design of the project, but since we're at the zoning stage, we had not gotten that far yet, but that would be the next step if the project moves forward.
Okay. Any questions?
So the way it's zoned now is commercial,
Yes, sir.
which they could right now go in there and put a shopping center and have many stores in there with many trips in and out every day. In our commercial plan, do we allow apartments or anything?
So under that zoning, we allow apartments. It's by conditional use, correct?
Right, okay. So if this didn't go through, it could be worse, and we could have a bunch of apartments there.
Or you could have industrial that has a lot of trucks. I mean,
Correct,
I mean,
yeah.
there's a lot of different. You
Right.
can't tell if it's going to go up or down.
Correct.
Yeah, but it could definitely be more intensive.
Can we bring the map up of the zoning, where the C2s and all that were again? Just want to take a look at something here. Oh, yeah, you got it right there. Yeah, that's
Is
it.
this good?
Yep.
And when we did the changes to the comprehensive plan, we're actually even limited in what we can do because you can't give less entitlements. So like the R2 zoning would be a less of an entitlement. So you can go more intensive, but not less intensive without going through a longer process. And then even if you went through, say someone didn't catch wind of that process, even if we did something right, they could still sue the city. So just there's a lot involved in it, how the zoning and, how the land use and zoning ends up being what it is. Because we're actually limited in doing some things that we might want to do because of that.
Yeah, I can see where having that on 176 there, what people are going to do to avoid downtown is they're going to come down, what is it, 222? And they're going to scoot down to 174th and then shoot up one of the streets back onto 176 and then that way. Because I'll tell you, I avoid downtown.
But if we take the entrance off South Side, you're gonna eliminate some of that, because now you just come down Main Street, make a left turn right in there.
Right.
And that's the biggest thing, other than the people coming out of that neighborhood.
I mean, in my opinion, it should be facing Main Street, the entrance.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, but that's a state road. To get access off the state roads is a nightmare.
Is the access to going in Dollar General, that's off of 176 too,
Yep.
isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know if they could be that close.
Yeah.
There's a limit to how
There
close
is,
entrances and
yes.
exits can be on a state highway.
Yeah.
Our church found that
Well,
out.
the dollar store's entrance is over here.
Right, it's on this side, but what you would do is they base it on even these on this side
Right.
for slow down of traffic.
Well, there's a church here, and there's no entrance on this side of it.
Right, it's on
And then Tumblemania's entrance is through here.
that one there, right.
So there's no entrances on Main Street.
Part of it is also
But
the
you got the
distance
two
from the
roads.
intersections too.
Yeah,
Right.
you got the two roads.
So,
And then you got all these over here onto it. And I don't know if they fell under the original. How many, you got the boat place, the propane place,
And then the Liquid Air.
Liquid Air,
And then
Theme Works,
And then
you
Theme
got
Works.
the warehouses.
And the
and the
warehouse.
warehouses. And that's the only commercial of that type we have, except in the
Industrial.
industrial district. Okay.
I mean,
but also take into account, I'm just wanting you to take everything into account.
Right.
The number of trips are spread out throughout the day.
Correct.
So per every hour, it's not like there's going to be hundreds of cars added on the road per every hour. It's probably going to end up, you'll have your peak times, but it's going to be much less than that.
But if you go to a shopping center, it's gonna be all
All
day.
day, yeah.
and I get that, but my biggest concern is the Bridalwood project is coming into play here too.
Yep,
So you're,
adding it right on
you're
there.
adding this on top of that. And it's just, to me, unless something happens with these roads first, I don't see how we're gonna support it.
With Bridalwood, they have to do an engineering study and they're supposed to do their traffic impact analysis it's going to trip at some point where their off-site improvements are going to be required, and they're gonna have to do it before, like, first phase, they might not have to because there won't be enough homes yet. But as they progress in the phases, they will have to do off-site traffic improvements to handle, or they won't get it improved, to handle the traffic, or they won't get it approved. I just wanted you to know, we're not gonna ignore it.
But that being said, we're allowing 70 residents compared to, could be a shopping center with hundreds of cars coming in and out. You know, I mean, or it could be apartments. If we don't change it, we have to look at everything.
Yeah, and my other thing, I think besides the traffic, is the safety for the people that are gonna live there in the future, having liquid air and that propane place right across the street. It's just a poor choice, in my opinion, to put that there.
I forgot your name, sir, in the corner that's from ThemeWorks. I have a question for you. What is the most hazardous product that you have on site?
We have things, solvents, you know, you can buy in a hardware store. We don't work with anything.
Anything much worse than toluene?
I think we can use that.
Wow.
Okay.
Maybe some acetone. Probably the most-
Okay.
Yeah, and what's that?
Methyl ketone, that's a chemical name for acetone.
Thank you.
I don't mean to keep interrupting, I'm so sorry.
No, go
But
ahead.
I was just having a conversation with the city attorney, and so you can make decisions based on compatibility, but you can't make, not saying this shouldn't be taken care of, but I have to say it, you can't make decisions based on the chemicals or solvents
Right.
in the facility. It's supposed to be based on compatibility. Not saying it's not a concern, I'm just, you know,
From,
what
I
you're
get
supposed
that, but we also have to worry about the safety of the citizens here. We can't just,
the
Nah.
legal thing we're facing here is they want to rezone to go PD.
right.
And if we say no, then they'll just go commercial C2 and do it that way and just get a conditional use. And then do we have less control under conditional use?
So you don't have to grant the conditional use if you can prove compatibility. So just to get that out there, so wouldn't necessarily just get it, but if you chose to approve it, then they wouldn't have to do all the things on the PD, in the PD.
So
But you have to have a compatibility argument. Which would be tough because you have higher intensive commercial and then the, lower intensive residential, so it is a transitionary, it's very normal for that use to be a transitionary use. I'm just saying from, if a professional planner gets up here and this goes anywhere, that's the advice I have to give you. And I'm not saying you have to approve, I'm just saying those things need to be taken into consideration.
Well, one thing I would like to say, and listen to what you are saying, Ashley. I think for the residents around this area, they may not like what I have to say here, but this would probably be the best use of the land. But I still have grave concerns about the chemicals. And one of the biggest reasons I do as well, I retired from GRU. I worked at the water treatment facility. We had chlorine on site. And I'm not going to go into details, but with them 2,000-pound cylinders and not knowing what's on site at these other two places, you ought to see what the kill zone was. Mm-hmm. And I think Don probably has some background in that, and maybe Kevin.
I worked chlorine leaks.
And there was a lot of places that couldn't be built within a certain radius of that plant. So that's my biggest concern right now, is safety and of course the sinkholes. And in regards to the sinkhole, we're not having a water leak there, are we, underground that's creating these?
It needs to be studied by someone a lot smarter than I am. But the staff would not recommend approval without the engineers looking at it. And it could be once they study it, say you approve this, if it's studied and it's not safe, then staff would not recommend site plan approval. Or the site would have to vastly change and they could only do like a really small percentage of it or something. But, and that's happened before with other projects in the past. It's not unusual.
And if we do approve this, that all has to be done before the site plan comes to us.
Right. So
All the
even if-
studies of the sinkholes, boring samples, all that.
Yeah, so, and
Correct, yeah.
so, and say they sold the property, because I always consider anyone who might flip a property on anything.
Right.
Because you are approving what's in the document, not the project before you.
Correct.
Necessarily. So just to let you know, anyone who would come forward with anything like this would have to follow under the same document, and they would have to meet the same requirements, or it would not go through a site plan.
Okay.
Is this something that we can do? Some kind of wall barrier between that and,
So, yes, you can always do anything at site plan. I would like to check our screening ordinance to see, but it doesn't have to, since it's a PD, it doesn't even have to comply with our screening ordinance. It could just be a condition of our PD.
okay.
So,
Actually, I got a question also. What, that one?
Like a retaining wall right there.
Yeah. Let's say we approve this, and they go forward, they do all their stuff, and it gets to the point, like, let's say the sinkhole's a problem. What, the site will still stay PD, or what if someone wants to come out later and change it to commercial? Will they have to go through this whole process again?
it'll stay PD, and they could, if commercial is not a use, which I don't think it is in the PD, they'd have to, if they wanted to do a shopping center, they'd have to come forward and request a change in zoning back to the C2. Then you would have, that's actually a good thing, because then you could control what commercial went on there.
I mean, there's those, the only commercial stuff's right there in that strip. I mean, over time, if they close, are they getting to be replaced with, or are they gonna move everything down to the industrial district? You see what I'm saying? Let's
Oh,
say,
you're saying if Dollar General closes?
no, let's say the propane plant closes.
Yeah.
Will it still go back to commercial? Can someone come in and do a PD site there?
Well, it
I'm
would.
just thinking, will that all be there in 20 years?
It would so since C2's on it, it would revert back to C2, but they can always come and request a PD, but you don't have to approve it. Like, you don't have to approve this one, but there's reasons why it's better to versus not. And typically, if it follows the comprehensive plan, and it does, then it's harder not to approve it, because you can get in litigation sometimes if you don't, when things follow a comprehensive plan and they're reasonable.
What concerns me on them pictures, Don, is it looks like all them sinkholes are right on the right of way.
That's what I was looking at.
I don't even know if they're on the
Goes up
property.
and under.
We don't know. It could come back under the road. You don't know what they're doing when they go down.
And you always can approve it contingent on things as well.
Yeah, but, I mean, we'll get to where we have to approve this, you
Yeah.
know, the site, all that stuff.
Right.
When they come
This-
back in
yeah.
front of us.
Yeah.
And even then, if you'd rather it be PD than commercial, if it, and it all ends up falling through anyway, wouldn't you?
Yes, I mean, if it fell through because it doesn't work out, and say if you pass the PD, it's still PD, but you can always come back and rezone to they could try R2 or C2 or PD would be probably the most appropriate. Or industrial's right across the street. They could try that too. You have all of it
You make me
touching.
call?
It's like the wild card, and you know.
Yeah.
Kevin? Yeah.
I have a question for you, Kevin, since you work for the fire department. Do y'all have the material safety data sheets in the event that you have to go there and fight a fire at both Suburban and Air Liquid and even ThemeWorks?
We do. We have access to the material that's on site, and in the case of the Air Liquide incident, upon our arrival, the SDS was provided, and that is available for public inspection if you contact Air Liquide.
Okay.
They have public meetings, I believe, quarterly. Don't quote me on this, but I do know they have public meetings that people are allowed to come to and ask questions. But again, the best contact would be to go to Air Liquide and find out specifically.
Okay.
As far as the public is concerned. Yeah, but they were nothing but cooperative in everything through the investigation. And as was stated before, the State Fire Marshal's Office requested ATF, and that is common standard operating procedure for an industrial accident like that. The fencing and the security was for site integrity and for the safety of the investigators, nothing more.
And I'd like to say Air Liquide, they ran annual scenarios with the fire department, running through safety protocols, so if anything happened, they knew how to respond. And one of the reasons it didn't get worse was because they'd practiced it so many times, and upon it happening, they followed that protocol. So it was something that you never want to happen in your city, but it could have been way worse. So they were good community partners in the fact that they had a tight hold on things, considering it did happen. So
Understand.
Any more questions?
Chair, at this stage, do you want me to read the resolution?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Okay. This is resolution number PB LPA Z 23-02, a resolution of the Plan Board of the City of High Springs, Florida, serving also as the local planning agency of the City of High Springs, Florida, recommending to the City Commission of the City of High Springs, Florida, approval of an amendment of less than 10 contiguous acres of land to the official zoning map of the City of High Springs Land Development Code pursuant to an application Z 23-02 by the property owner of said acreage, providing for rezoning from C2 commercial to PD 14 plan development of certain lands within the corporate limits of the City of High Springs, Florida, repealing all resolutions in conflict, providing an effective date. The appropriate motion is to pass resolution number PB LPA Z 23-02 upon its reading by title only. Of course, you're entitled to pass the resolution. You can table it to a date certain in the future, or you can deny it. And it should be based upon substantial and competent evidence that is brought before you. I think all the residents that have asked questions have been appropriate. Mr. Swager has certainly given you testimony from the applicant that has considered competent and substantial evidence. Kevin's provided information. Our planning staff has certainly done that as well. So that's the basis of your decision.
Any more questions up here? Is there anybody online? Okay, I guess I need a motion for something to happen. Either table it, conditional approval, or denial.
Well, and I'm playing devil's advocate because I know it could go worse from here. I'm going to make a motion that we approve Z 23-000030.
I second.
Christie?
Public
You're right,
comment,
yeah. Any
sorry.
more? I'm sorry, you're correct. Any more discussion on this from the public?
The chemical at Air Liquide is diborane. But to make it clear, we do oppose a residential development across the street from our industrial site. We believe it will lead to further conflict with the people that live there. We think they're not going to be happy about what we're doing, and it's going to impact our business. It will also impact the other businesses in that area. And we ask that the planning board take into serious consideration what our businesses bring to the community, what it means to have businesses in this community that provide opportunity to youth. We have multiple generations of families working at our company. Those kids didn't have to go to Tampa or Orlando or Jacksonville to find opportunity because they were able to find opportunity here in High Springs. And if High Springs doesn't want to become just a bedroom community for Gainesville, it needs to protect its robust economy, and that includes manufacturing. And putting a residential development across the street from industrial zone areas does not do that. And the idea of any of us relocating to the industrial plant off of, behind there is not realistic. If we leave, we'll be gone. It won't be to move somewhere else within town. So please consider that and consider the future conflict that could result from this going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else?
Get a second time?
Quick opening, yes. Go ahead. Keep it brief, please. Okay.
Just remind me your name.
Deborah Gesser.
Deborah, gotcha.
So development will negatively impact the existing neighborhood with additional traffic patterns that are not consistent with single-family residential. The addition of 114 vehicles, in addition to all those individuals that will be living in those apartments, will negatively impact the area and will negatively impact our property values. Stating that the development will be quality master plan development is pure speculation and it's not grounded in actual fact. We don't know what's going to happen down the road. It might look nice in 6 months, but I went and visited Spring Hill and the villas at High Springs, and I shudder to think that that would be what was down the street from me.
Thank you very much. I got a question here.
We have a motion and a second on the floor.
Oh, that's right. We forgot. I'm sorry. I forgot all about that. Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
We're out of order.
I forgot. I'm sorry. I'm out of order on this. We already had a motion. I forgot all about the motion. Go ahead.
I just want to make a comment. I know y'all don't want this, but I feel if we don't do this, it could be much worse. That 114 cars could be 300 or 400. And I understand the concerns. It's across from, industrial, but at C2, they could put an apartment complex in there, and we could be worse. I think this is the best plan for what we have. They're working with us. They're making a nice layout of the property. If we go to a shopping center, you guys are going to hate it worse than this, I believe.
What's the density on a commercial property apartment complex compared to this?
It just depends on what they decide. It's much higher. I mean, this is, it's basically a duplex development, and it's a small one. I mean, they could put something 2 and 3 stories high. And then that, I mean, there's a lot of other things they can do with the property. Like I said, it's the wild card in the Uno game. I mean, look at all the uses surrounding it.
Oh, I got a question on that. Can the person who made the motion retract his motion?
Absolutely. I think. I mean, can they? Yeah.
All right. One other question then. Being that it could technically be something much worse, by just going to PD, that limits what it could be. And like I said, if we did go to PD and it stayed at PD, and even if the whole thing fell through, to go back to something worse, they would have to apply to us again.
Yeah, they would have to apply to get back to the C2 zoning or another, or possibly industrial. Those would be the 2 that would fit. And then, but right now the uses are limited to what's in the PD, which is mainly things that would serve that development. There's not any other uses in there that aren't serving the development.
Okay. Anything else? Got anything to say? All right, we have a motion, and I need a second. Do we get a second? Who gave the second? You got a second?
I do, but I'm going to
Had a
retract
second.
my
We got we got Bolliger motion to approve, second Tapanis.
I'm going to retract the second.
Retract. So then
We need a second.
we still need a second. Then correct? Okay.
No, I actually wasn't allowed to do that in between that time. That was for the discussion up here. I can't second.
Change the motion.
Yeah. Well, if we don't get a second, it dies.
What happens if it dies?
We have to get it.
Then there's just no motion on the table. If it dies for lack of a second, then we go back to ground zero, and somebody would have to offer another motion.
And what happens if no motion is made this time? Does it go up to commission?
I think there needs to be a motion
Okay.
either
Make a
to.
motion to-
So the motion, perhaps it would be helpful, Ashley, to talk about what the site plan approval process would be, so that everyone here has a little bit more of an understanding, or perhaps Christie could go through that. So the PD zoning process is strictly zoning. We're talking about zoning at this stage, and then it goes in front of the city commission for 2 readings with regard to zoning only. So that's the only issue that is before you now. I think Ashley touched on it earlier, maybe it was Christie, that the site plan approval process that would go for, you have to have a master plan with your PD zoning, and then you have to have site plan approval. There has to be geotechnical evaluations of the property, which will include study of the sinkholes and the lime rock layer below. I've seen situations where city staff requires ground penetrating radar if you have a very intense situation going on with sinkhole activity, and there's going to be building going on. Councilmember Riddle mentioned a solid waste facility that was going in, and conflict over geotechnical. I've had the same experience where we required a very intense, not only ground penetrating radar, but also boring testing, so to verify what was really going on under the soil. So there's a lot more that goes on, even if you approve the zoning side of it at this stage. You have an ability to punt, so to speak, and continue it to a date certain in the future for more information. That's perfectly your right. The third element is to deny it, and you should state on the record why it is that you're denying it. What specifically is what is the problem in your mind between a planned development and as it sits right now for C2? And I think that there's been a little bit of discussion this evening about uses by right, which are designated with a P in our zoning code, and then conditional uses and uses by special exception. And so if you look at our table, then you can see there's a variety of uses that can go in the C2 zoning category. Some are more intense, some are less intense. The planned development district is to try to achieve a mix of all of those uses. Sometimes in planned development, you have commercial uses and residential uses in combination on a site. This coming before you is strictly residential with attached dwelling units. So that's, and I think it's been said here this evening by not only Clay, but Ashley and Christie, that you have some control over your agreement that you enter into with the developer with respect to how the development is ultimately structured in the master planning and the development agreements that you entered into. So that's the criteria that you're looking at this evening, as best as I can say it. Now, maybe Ashley can speak to Christie, or Clay, the planners can give us more information, but that's really the nutshell of what you're looking at.
The reason we did the plan development is to protect it from being like some of the other apartment complexes in the community. So we did that to drive up the standards And if this was passed, there's a developer agreement as well. And the development agreement goes to the commission, not necessarily the plan board. But the development agreement, as you know how they work, it drives up the level of the development even further. So it has some more specifics in it. So again, that's why we go this route oftentimes and steer people this route, is so that we can be ensured we have a quality development going forward if you so choose this use. So as you know, the zoning is just on the use, and the stipulations that go along within the PD. A lot of these things as far as the sound wall and that sort of thing, we can work with them at site planning and again, see what they're willing to do and what the code requires. Some things are required, some things aren't. But typically we find that once things are approved, the developer will work with us because they want to do something that works for the people in the development as well as the city and their neighbors. So I think a lot of these concerns would be addressed at site plan if it's approved.
So for example, Mr. Chair, what we've seen is a question of can you build a wall? When they're building their, the landscaping plan, when they're building their retention pond, do they put a berm, an earthen berm in between the parking lot and the for visual purposes, for purposes of sound attenuation, all of those kind of things? Do we require them to put in some sort of a solid hedge on top of that? There's a lot of.
Would that be under site plan?
Yeah, yeah, and so depending, again, you might not approve it, but if you do, even when you come to the specifics, say you chose a berm, like I'm really specific in how high, what the slope is, and all this stuff, because I don't ever want to end up with a berm that's just like this little flat thing. We try to protect the city as much as we can.
And that's why I was talking about it, some kind of wall to help with the sound. We have ThemeWorks across the street that's concerned with that and bringing problems to them. So if we can put some kind of sound barrier up, maybe it would work. But
Well, they gotta come before us again.
Yeah.
When it comes to that, so.
But you could pass the motion with that. I mean, I don't know if they could require a sound wall, but that you propose that they consider a sound wall, that the commission consider them having a sound wall, and
At this
so then,
stage?
well,
No.
when they pass the motion, they can do things like that.
Staff to look at a sound attenuation, when they're going through their landscaping part of the plan, that staff should look at sound attenuation, not only the visual side of it, but also the sound attenuation from the industrial side. So those are things you can direct staff to do.
But that would all be at site work. That
Yeah.
wouldn't be for zoning.
Right,
Well-
but you can still put it in your motion that you direct us how you want us
To
to
look
work
at
with
it.
them at the site plan, so we have to address all of those. So I can't say the developer, because you don't want to negotiate with them right here, because they want to go back and check price quotes and everything. So I
Correct.
can't say you have to do this, but that they work with us on it. And there usually will be something that comes out. They have to at least address it with the commission.
definitely this.
I notice all these retention ponds, they always are at the edge of the property and stuff like that. And then he put trees on one side. Isn't there anything we can put trees all the way around it?
Yes, I mean, you can.
Because that adds like a double buffer
Yeah.
as well.
And so, again, I can't say the
That's for
developer is
site
going to agree to all of it, but you could even say, you could even have us go back and say the things you'd like, and then we can come back before you a second meeting and say, talk to the developer in between about things they would be willing to consider at site plan, or you can just make a motion on what you would like to see staff work on with them, and then push that up to commission. Am I correct on all that?
Well,
Like,
I think that'd be the way to go, is for maximum, to make a motion with a maximum effort toward type of a buffer, and maybe doubling, tripling it somehow, even with a wall or something, would be the way only way I consider it.
there's a lot of different ways of mediation, sound mediation, so there's a lot of different things we can work on.
That and the ground density is, to
Yeah,
me,
well,
is-
that's gotta be passed anyway.
correct me if I'm wrong, but the development, which hasn't went in yet, which I don't remember what it was, 120, 40 homes off of 441? We negotiated to have that wall built in there on the back.
On the backside, yeah.
Yeah,
But that was a site plan.
They've only come with,
Site.
oh, you're talking about Fairfield Oaks?
Yeah.
They've only
Yes,
come with
yes.
preliminary plat. They're supposed to do a lot more at final
Yeah.
plat, because that
Yeah,
was,
okay.
Christy and I went over through all this stuff, and like, they don't have all this stuff yet, and we're like, yeah, sometimes they'll just, like drainage plan, they'll just do arrows, but then they get into the nitty gritty at final,
Yep.
so. So we're checking over every single thing. Believe me, I did not spend that much time writing it to have them not do it.
And
Is
I
there
can
no
help on the
second on this?
sinkhole item because they would still be bound by our code about
Right.
sinkholes, and that's
Right.
I mean, that's
no
pretty
development
serious
within
pictures.
50 feet of an
Yeah.
edge of a sinkhole. So
Yeah.
that's.
Christy has
Still in
killed many projects in this city
Sorry.
for the sinkhole. No, it's
I have
great. I'm
killed
glad you
many-
did.
I have killed many
As
projects.
someone who had many sinkholes open up behind her house, I'm glad she does.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
Cheaper
it's
to build a pool.
bad.
So
Even when
basically,
you've
from
had
the edge of
them,
those,
50 feet.
within 50 feet,
yeah, it's
nothing.
dangerous.
Okay.
When you've had those, you don't.
And then anything within 200 feet has special geotechnical work. A engineer actually has to sign off that the proposed development does not negatively impact those sinkholes.
What
or
happens?
that's not going to make something happen
Worse
somewhere
than
else.
somewhere else, yeah.
Yeah.
Because what they did to fill it in, that's just a Band-Aid.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
But I mean, even with that, when you get to that, that's great, but that's for new development, but there's houses right now within 200 feet of that,
Yeah. Right, it could just move, yeah.
so.
Well, I think anyway, I'll have Mid-Tower engineers go look at
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
And they might already be doing something like that. I need to see. They said they called the city, so I'll be checking with Public Works to see if it was them.
Yeah, because clearly those are on the right of way, and the comment was made that Public Works has already filled them in, so we
Yeah,
wouldn't be doing that on private property, I hope.
Yeah, we go fill them in normally pretty quickly,
Yeah.
but due to the severity of them, I really would like Mid-Tower to come out and take a look at
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, they just had that sinkhole over by Tampa, that sucked that guy up a couple years ago, open up again.
Yep, they will.
Well, I guess this motion's died, and I guess we need another motion, either with conditions or something.
Let me know the number.
It's in here somewhere.
This is all mixed up.
Yeah, mine is too, that's why I went to yours.
Here, it's right on top,
There we go, it's right on top, there we go.
circled for you.
Oh, well, thank you. I motion that we pass with conditions Z 23-000030.
What are those conditions?
Conditions with sound barriers, I guess at this point,
Sinkhole.
and ground density reports.
Second.
Any more discussion? I need a roll call count.
Brad Riddle,
No.
Tim Bolliger,
Yes.
Steve Tapanis,
Yes.
Mark Bertocci's absent, and Donald Alderman.
Yes.
Motion passes 3-1.
I think we can keep them if we do that when they come back. At the site plan, yeah.
When we do the site work,
Yeah, we'll get them back.
Is that it for this?
For planning
Everybody?
board, but we have historic board
Right.
directly after.
Please go to the commission meeting, okay? Please. Bridalwood, we asked everybody to go, nobody showed up, so, except for a couple people. All right, thank you. All right.
I make a motion, we close
It's like, what's going
to
on?
adjourn.
It's like we're,
But he's not
Bridalwood was a
listening.
nightmare.
Hey, we need
Hey,
to close.
I'm
We close
Planning
the
board.
planning board meeting? I need a
Planning board
second.
meeting.
Second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Same sign. Motion carries 4-0. Meeting closed. You guys want to take a break before? All right. 8:22 on July 17th, 2023. I'm opening this Historic Preservation Board. We need roll call. I guess we don't need a roll call because we're already here. Okay. Then I guess the first thing is approval of the last meeting's minutes.
I'll make approval of the last month's minutes.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. 4-0. All right. New business. Z23-000045, Certificate of Appropriateness for the Educators Mural Heart of High Springs. And is there anyone here to speak on that?
Yes,
Is that
so
you?
we have Kelly Barber here, so he will be speaking to the item if you have any questions, but otherwise all the information was in your packet, so he's here for any any questions that you all have will be directed as him as the applicant.
Okay. What's this mural here is not one of the original approved murals?
It was an approved mural that we did on a canvas. It's not on a wall. This was originally the one that we wanted to put on the library or on the school, the old school. It didn't get approved. We're asking for permission to put it on the property, and we're willing to build whatever it takes to get it done. If you look in there, it's got the landscaping, it's kind of got the location that we wanted to put it in.
So I would like, can I add something?
Yeah.
Please.
So, this came before the commission just to be able, before it came to y'all to see if they would allow it to be on their property. And the commission voted yes, they would allow it as a whole, I can't remember what the exact vote was, but it passed for it to be on, so it can be on city property. And we treat it like it's a commercial property because it's a old school. So anytime you do, like a major change to the property, we told the commission they would bring a site plan forward, just showing the actual location, like to scale in more detail. So if y'all approve this tonight, a site plan still has to go to commission. The site plan would bypass you to commission because, the site plan would come to them before the commission too, but I don't know, what does the mural ordinance say?
A commercial type of site plan? Because they do include a site plan in here showing roughly where the
Oh, yeah,
landscaping
so
is.
it
But
would-
is this that, or is this just
Oh, no,
the
that
COA?
would be fine. That could go in front of the commission like that.
We do have to go, if it gets approved by you guys, we've got to go, it's got to be engineered. So there's some things that have to be done still, but that is the site plan.
But that has to be approved by commission too, so ordinarily, it'd stop here, but it's not because it's on city property, if y'all approve it.
Well, my only concern with this is I thought the ordinance was with private owners and these murals.
Yeah.
I don't remember the city ever saying that they would allow something like this because.
So I got two things. Was this in when we did all the wall dogs?
So this was
'Cause I
not a
don't
part
remember
of-
seeing this.
They painted it at the festival, but this was not one of the murals that you all reviewed or anything.
Okay, because technically we're supposed to review them beforehand. That's in the ordinance. Second thing, I'm against to putting any mural on city property because all we do is open a door
Okay.
to stop. What are we gonna do if somebody else, and I love it, I think it's beautiful, but I don't, to me, it doesn't belong on city property because now, what are we gonna do? We're setting a precedence.
So, two things. Can we do two things here? If you like the mural and you think the mural should just be approved, I don't want to hold up, I don't want them to have to bring the mural as a mural again, if you are okay with the mural. But I guess the mural is part of wherever it goes.
Well, the
So
mural's
I
already
can't say
done.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but, that's true, but it doesn't mean they have to put it anywhere. But the mural is, it depends where it goes, because that's part of the ordinance, so scratch that.
So
Sorry.
Yeah.
can you confirm for me, is there a separate site plan that we have to review as like plan
No,
board?
this
Or
is
is it
fine.
only
It's a-
certificate of appropriateness? Because that's what they've got right now is the COA.
There's
which
a
is historic
separate
proof.
one, like, that has to go before the commission, because in the meeting,
Oh, because they asked for something extra.
yeah.
Okay,
So
okay,
in the
got it.
meeting, they approved having it on city property, but they want to come back so they could see exactly where.
Who's
So-
paying for all that landscaping?
Well,
They would.
The Heart of High Springs.
they're paying for everything, according to everything I read. But one of the questions I have for you. So in the one picture, you got two people standing out there, and that's supposed to represent where the mural would go, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Next question is, I'm understanding it would be put, if it was placed here, it would be put, it'll be 8 foot tall, 24 foot wide, correct?
Correct.
But it's not gonna go to the ground, it's gonna set above the ground 30 inches to 36 inches, and then the actual mural will go up 8 foot, correct?
The mural itself is 8 by 24, correct?
Okay.
And then it would be elevated.
So we're talking 8 foot,
11 foot.
Yeah.
so maybe 36. All right, here's where my problem comes in. I was over there. Based on where these guys are standing, I took a tape measure and I measured from which there needs to be dirt put in there. So this is the scenario right now is it measures from the ground to the top of the window.
Bottom of the window.
I mean, the bottom of the window, excuse me, measures 8'6", okay? I went inside the building and looking out, if they're gonna, I don't know how much dirt's gonna be brought in and what the elevation, if it'll be raised, if anyway. But as it sits right now, when you look out that window, that mural blocks like the what do you call it, the train back, the caboose back here.
Okay.
It blocks quite a bit of stuff.
Okay.
Based on those dimensions.
Okay.
And my measurement. So that's my concern, being inside the building, that it's taken away from looking out and having a nice clean view out there.
Well, you're gonna be 3 foot, you're gonna be at least half of the windows.
Well, that's, yeah,
Plus
if you
the
go.
landscaping.
And I don't, and that's measuring where dirt needs to be, the city needs to put dirt in there right now. It's washing out, so, anyway.
And what kind of framework is this gonna go in?
Again, that's engineered, so it'll be similar to what we did with the sign. If you saw the Welcome to High Springs sign on 441 coming in from the Alachua side, it would be similar type frame build, it's aluminum, that we're gonna hang an aluminum structure on, so.
Now, how deep are you intending to bury this thing?
Well, again, that's the city's gotta tell us that. The building department's gonna say, well, we gotta send it to an engineer, and the engineer says, here's what works.
I
Here's
got
how
you.
this is gonna happen, yeah, so they tell us that, so.
City High Springs' biggest event once a year would be impacted by this, landscaping and sign. That's where they hold the shootout. I mean, and they would be eating into a good third of that with the landscaping and everything. I just,
So are you guys, we just got kind of a conversation here, right?
yeah, go right ahead, yeah.
So, well, I'm just thinking out loud here, so are you against it being on the property, period? Or maybe you're not, but maybe we need to talk about, because we're certainly open to recommendations and suggestions to say, hey, this probably isn't a good spot on that property, but maybe this is a good spot on the property.
Me, in my opinion, is this needs to be between the Heart of High Springs and a private owner. I don't think the city needs to get involved in this at all.
I agree 100%, and it's not that I don't like it, I think the
like it.
landscaping looks great there and all, but I'm not so much worried about this, but what happens if somebody else comes along,
Yes.
John Doe comes along and he paints some presidents, well, hey, you let that go on city property, I wanna put this here.
And once you do
Now
that-
we're in, we set the precedents. And I just don't wanna get, the city employees don't have enough time now, we don't need to get into fighting these battles with other people, cost and all
Yeah, I don't
that.
think
If we just don't do it, then we don't open that can of worms.
And the First Amendment is a definite sword when it comes to if we let one, you gotta let everybody.
Yeah.
And that's, I gotta agree with them on that. Originally, I wasn't thinking that direction. I was thinking of just the impact it would have on our festival, but, yeah, once you open that can of worms.
Yeah, what's next?
I'd be curious, this is the attorney, right? This is,
Yes.
have you been listening to this? I'm just kind of curious what your thoughts would be about, if they did allow us to do that, does it set precedent? And so then the next person that comes along wants to put another mural or something else, it becomes an issue? Does that sound right?
Well, I have, in fact, listened to the whole conversation, and I, before we get to your question, Ashley, is this in the historic district? Okay, so we're under 7.12.05, which is murals in the historic district. So I think that this board and the city commission has a little more discretion than they would have in other areas. And I do believe that this board is a recommending authority to the city commission. And our board gives their opinion, so to speak, and the city commission can choose to take that opinion or deny that opinion. So if you look at it as an arm of the city, and this arm is saying, we don't think it's a good idea to put murals on public buildings. I think they have the discretion to do that. I think that's within their right and authority to provide that opinion to the city commission. Now, the city commission can take that opinion and modify it. They can adhere to it all the way, or they can deny the opinion, override it, and do their own thing. That's what the city can do. I do believe, now more pointedly to your question, if you allow one end, does it allow it everywhere else? The point of that is, in a historic district, you have a lot more, you have considerably more latitude with respect to restrictions. And each mural is so individually, such its own particular thing. And normally, what we're talking about is a building owner putting a mural, a private building owner put a mural up on their particular property. And the building owner will say, no, I don't want it, I don't like it, I don't want it, it's not gonna go. That decision of a building owner does not impact the building owner right next door to that particular, they can decide they do like murals, and a mural could go on that building. So the city has the same ability to take this mural and put it on a building that's in the historic district, or they could put a mural on this building. It's within their right to do that. I don't think their decision, if they do it on the community center, is necessarily indicative of what they decide to do with their city hall. I think it's an individualized decision in each instance, and particularly with murals.
So just for clarification, so since this is historic board though, it would stop, if they deny it, it would stop here though, right? It wouldn't go forward to the commission because the way the mural ordinance is written and how our historic board works, or it would still go to the commission. I don't have the, I think the mural ordinance was somewhere over there. I don't have it in front of me. Where is it? Oh, wait a minute.
2022-13 is the ordinance number.
What is staff recommending on this?
I don't think it's up here. Did you take my mural?
Oh, I did.
No,
I'm sorry. I snagged
And
it.
if I did, I didn't do it on purpose.
I did it.
Mural ordinance stealer.
I did it.
Here, you can have the whole thing.
So,
I'm gonna ask you a question. Is there anywhere else that y'all would even consider putting it? That
What
more
about the community
people-
school?
Yeah, like the community school. I mean, wouldn't more people see it there than in this particular location?
And they actually have that
I mean,
center
they
drive
would-
around.
Possibly, yeah, we really wanted it downtown. This is where the rest of them are, so they're all walking distance, and not that you couldn't walk to the community school, but when people come to visit downtown, they're all, they're around, so, so we haven't gone that far, because we were hoping this would work, but just the whole idea of, this is, these are two folks who, one of them was the principal in that school, they both went through integration in town, and there are just two folks to put there. If we're gonna put anybody, if they belong anywhere, that's where they belong, and if anybody belongs there, it's them. But, I respect you guys, so yeah.
Not sure this is the right place for it.
These murals were originally sold to us that we had people come up in the very first meeting saying, we're gonna take kids from the school and walk down and look at all of them. Still involved in the school.
Sure.
I mean, it would be no different than that, I guess, other than the public would be less, the actual general
Well, I mean,
public.
but that's still gotta get approved. If they go to a school, Alachua County School Board's gotta approve that.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
And you haven't, no private business has been wanting to see about putting that on their building? Or have you not
There
gone
are
that
a
route
couple
yet?
that would probably take it in a heartbeat, but we really, this is where we were really hoping that. this
And
is
I
where-
understand
this is
why
where
you
they
were-
belong, but, you know.
I just, it's a slippery slope and
Yeah.
I don't want to tread that and I don't want city staff to have to waste time on treading that. What is city staff's recommendation on this? Was there any talk?
Talk to Christy. I'm gonna let Christy make the recommendation on this one. Because we talked about it, but she knows the historic district more than me.
Look at her face turning red.
I'm sorry, pressure's on.
Mike just-
Christy, you get a raise
you
after
are
this.
reviewing it based on the criteria in the code. In it, it does allow for you to place it in a front facade and on property. It's kind of complicated because commission has already voted to place it in front of the building. So
then-
I don't know what we should
what do you
recommend.
mean,
I would
the
say-
commission already?
You don't need to say no. I was just
So-
trying to see where.
Yeah,
cities
why
are.
is it
From my,
coming
from my
before us if
deal,
it was
when
already-
I was looking at it based on the other criteria for murals just in general, not necessarily its location because the commission's previous vote, our conversation was kind of like the colors aren't out of whack, and even if they were, that it, when you look at the brewery one that was permitted, so like the look and feel of what is portrayed in the mural, like that meets historic district regulations.
I'm sorry, but the brewery one was kind of stuffed on us. That
Okay.
was not even
I-
approved.
That
I-
wasn't
so,
after the fact one.
I would
but-
agree on it, but
So
that
you're-
was not staff's recommendation.
So basically, the reason why it went, the reason commission looked at it before you all did was to get the permission to place it on city property. They
Right.
weren't
Right.
technically looking at the historic district side. That's what you guys are looking at. So you're looking at the colors and whether it will hurt the wall, but it's not being placed on a wall, so it does fit the fact that it is not on it. It is in the front facade, but the motion from commission was to place in front of Old School. It's just very complicated because
Yeah.
it's already been seen by commission and now it's coming to you. So I don't feel like as planning tech, I can give you a good recommendation. It's really up to y'all.
Though, in that ordinance, didn't we put something in there to where it can't be facing residentials and stuff like that?
That's not facing
It won't, but it's gonna block the caboose
And it's like I said, it's messing
from
up
being
a
inside
field.
and looking out.
Yeah, I see what you're
It'd be
saying.
11 foot tall.
Okay, so
Yeah.
This picture, if you're
11
looking at this
foot.
picture,
So,
this is not just.
this
do it
is a hard
justice.
one for us, because if it was something mounted onto, most of the ones are mounted onto the building,
Yeah.
or they're like on the building or mounted, so this is a little unusual so I wouldn't disagree with what you're saying about the location. It's already, we know the height because it's already been painted. So, I mean, you could make a recommendation on, and you you can say whatever you want.
I have
Well,
another
the
question.
thing is, when we make recommendations, if we were to say we recommend denial or we recommend approval, like if it's denial, it has to be something specific in here. You have to tell me section 7 point whatever, they don't meet this criteria.
No, we
That's
can do
what
that.
we review on. Now, whatever you guys want to review on, it's just.
We can do it based on that.
Right,
It's
yeah, we
not
just
privately
need
owned.
the
I have a
specific
question for
one.
you. Sure. Once that gets put on city property, does that become city's property?
No, not according to what I read in here.
No.
And they're responsible for it, and
Right.
the city can have them remove it
Right.
at their expense
And we
for
could make
whatever
it.
reason.
We can
That's
make an
what's up.
agreement with them too, since it's our city property, you can do it, like, you could do a separate agreement with anything in it, since it's on our property.
So I do think this is different than a normal situation coming before you. Normal situation is that it is the group coming, they're an agent of the landowner, and the landowner has given his consent for purposes of putting the mural on the property. That's your normal procedure that goes on. So you substitute yourself in this instance, for the landowner.
Or the commission was the landowner.
And this, ultimately, the commission's going to make the decision as the landowner to decide, do we want this on our property or not? So when the landowner is telling you, yes, through its agent, the Wall Dogs or the group, Heart of High Springs, that is moving it forward, you already have the approval of the landowner. And your approval process, when it's not in the historic district, is much more limited because murals are considered free speech. So you can't get into content-based regulations.
And I don't think we have a problem with the content.
Right.
No.
No, the content.
Yeah.
So, but the point of it is that in this instance, it's different because you're deciding first, does it go on public property? That's your first step along the way.
But didn't the commission already decide that?
I think they've sent it to this board, and this board has the ability to say, we don't think it should go on public property. They're the first step along the way. Now, the city commission has the ability to adhere to their opinion or deny their opinion. So that's the first step of the inquiry for this board. Secondarily, once you make the decision of, yes, we think it should go on public property, then I think you can talk about the height of the mural, the placement of the mural, or all of the other items that a normal landowner would have the ability to state.
And see, being that this didn't go through the proper permitting, because it was painted during the Wall Dogs, but nothing was brought prior to that, like the other murals, we couldn't set the height, we couldn't set the width, we couldn't set nothing. And that's, something else is, we're kind of just bending this rule because we're
Better
seeing
ask
it after it's
forgiveness
done.
Better ask forgiveness and permission.
Correct.
Well, I don't think you're bending any rules. We painted it and you'll either allow.
I understand, but before it was painted, it should have been approved.
No, we can.
That's in the ordinance.
We can paint a mural.
Well, you're supposed to, if you're
We just weren't allowed to
gonna,
display it, but we can paint it.
you can paint it, but now you want to display it. But when a mural comes, the ordinance stays, we're supposed to get some drawings of it prior to it being
Right,
approved.
yeah.
And we didn't get none of that, and this is already done.
But it's painted, and now you have the drawings that say, can we put it up somewhere?
Right.
Until you allow us, then we can't put it up.
So can I help? Maybe it might help. This might not help. So could they say something like, so if they don't think it should be put on city property, whatever, could they say like, here's a motion, we don't think that this should be done, but if the commission decides to move forward, here's what we think.
Sure.
I was just trying to help. with that.
Well, the commission's gonna do what they wanna do anyway.
Correct.
But looking at these pictures, just visualize this. So that mural's basically, I'm saying these are 5 foot, it's coming to about right here, okay? This is the height of it, that's the mural. When we
From the
step
ground
up,
up.
from the ground up, when we step up here, that's probably only 18 inches, we're talking 36.
Another 18 inches above that.
So you're talking,
Yeah.
and that's my point of where they wanna locate it,
I think we just need to put it on the wall.
Well, then we're on city property still.
Well, there's nowhere to put it on that wall.
Can you make it really tall and
Not
put
according to my
flashing
Well,
neon signs,
I know-
flashing neon lights on it?
Yeah, right.
I remember when this came up way back when, and someone had posted at one of your meetings, a little picture, and it was supposed to be on the wall, actually facing the residential area, but it was a much smaller picture of, I forget who it was. And that was before we even went before commission and everything. And that's what I was thinking of, but then it got shot down because it was on city property. But, all right. Any more questions? I'll go right ahead.
So with the mural ordinance, can you confirm for me what the proper process is for this? Because it is a COA, but it's also a mural permit because they're like combined. So COAs normally end with historic board. Does this still move on to commission or does it end here? Because I read 7/1205 about murals in the historic district, and I asked Angela earlier for her interpretation of it, but we weren't sure if it follows the normal COA process of ending here or going on to commission because it's also a mural. We just weren't sure, so we wanted your clarification since you wrote it.
So the paragraph 1 subparagraph 1 under 7.12.05, Christie.
Mhm.
It says the Historic Preservation Board the Historic Preservation Board review shall be completed within 20 days of an application deemed complete containing all of the information required pursuant to section 07.12.03, and this section provided. However, that the Historic Preservation Board is authorized to utilize additional time for good cause with notice to the applicant stating that what the basis is for the delay. Thereafter, the city commission must complete its review within 30 days. So it goes to, so no matter what they do here, it goes to city commission within 30 days.
Okay. So that it functions as a recommendation, not the end-all like
Correct.
COAs do?
Correct.
Okay.
I think one of the early drafts did say ends at planning, the Historic Preservation Board, but this final draft
Okay.
goes to city commission.
Your draft number 15.
Yeah, all I want to do is be
Yes.
clear on what I've got to do for the process,
That's
so
the next
that's
step.
what I want.
It will go to city commission, Kristen.
Yeah, that photograph doesn't.
Well, it's yeah. It was like the murals.
Totally inaccurate, so, anyway.
All right, any more discussion up here?
No.
Any motions? Make a motion.
I gotta put my glasses on.
Oh, you can have it now.
I motion that we deny Z23000045 certificate of appropriateness for the Educators Mural, Heart of High Springs.
That's fine. I just want to make sure we get it right.
I second it because I don't think it needs to be on city property.
Any more discussion?
I would like to see it on a public building, I mean, a private building. I would like to see it up, but I just don't feel it needs to be on public property.
Anything to say?
I agree with the other two board members up here right now. I like the mural. I think we need to find another home for it, not on city property. And as well, like I said, it's going to be an obstruction.
I also agree with the other board members as far as the city property and the location on the city property. I think it will impact future events in High Springs as well as being on city property. Chrissy?
And we're missing
Sometimes
one.
that's how it is. You ready for roll call?
Yes.
Okay. Let's start with Steve Tapanis.
You're voting on one?
Your
yes
vote,
or no?
roll call vote, sorry.
No.
Mark
No, no.
Bertocci's
Hold-
absent.
Hold on. You got to vote. It's on the
Oh,
motion.
It's on the motion.
Right.
Yes.
Yes, okay, gotcha.
Confused.
Mark Bertocci's absent. Donald Alderman?
Yes.
Brad Riddle?
Yes.
Tim Bolliger?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Kelly, I do like it, and I would like
I
to
do
see
like
it
the
on
mural.
I hope
a
you
private
find a good
building.
place for it.
Yes.
I really do.
I just don't want to go down that
I
slippery
mean,
slope.
it was one of the better ones, I'll be honest with you.
They might have sent the wrong spokesman.
No.
No, you did it, you did a
did just
fine
fine.
job, it just, I don't want to travel down that slope
All
for
good,
city
man.
staff
I wouldn't
or
want you that
residents.
job. I appreciate what you're doing
Right.
over there.
And I hope you understand that that view, I don't want to block.
Yeah, all right, yeah. We'll find somewhere to get it.
Okay.
Hey, you got comment out there.
Oh, we never asked for public comment on this, did we? That's all right.
I would just like to say that I have talked to a lot of people in the Douglas neighborhood, so they do want to see the mural. So I would suggest maybe you reach out to Lee's Preschool. It might be a good spot to put it in.
There you go.
Appreciate
Yeah,
that.
thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Any more public comment, since I forgot to let everybody talk? All right, I need a motion to close the meeting.
I'll make a motion, we close the meeting.
I will second that motion.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. It is closed at 8:52.